right. Well, I'm here with my fellow Canadian brother, Kyle. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is going to be good.
I had no idea you were Canadian until about 5 minutes ago, so this is fun.
And same to you. I just assume everyone's American. Like the Americans just dominate everything. So everyone's just assumed American until proven otherwise.
I know, right? I know. So it's an honor to be with another Canadian. You have a podcast and you guys have a ministry called Kingdom Sexuality. And I don't really know anybody else in this space that is as kingdom and as, specific about sexual subjects as you guys. I think you do a really good job of blending those two things. So I want to start it off with a bit of a big question. Why are Christians so afraid to talk about sex?
Yeah, it is a big question. We could spend the whole time talking about this, but I think the big thing is it's been done so poorly in the past, right? You've got purity culture, you've got I Kiss Dating Goodbye, you got that whole movement of like the 90s and early 2000s where we're now seeing the damage that did, right? The whole purity culture thing, it's caused a lot of problems, mostly for the women, but the guys are not excluded from that. And so I think there's a big group of people who are just unsure how to do it differently. Like we thought that was the right way of doing it at the time. And now we're learning that the heart behind it was good, but the delivery was a failure and not done the right way. So now it's like, okay, how do we keep the same message? Like purity is a good thing. We want to preach purity. We want people to save themselves for marriage because that's the way that God designed sex and that's the way that God designed marriage. But how do we do it in a way that's different and healthy? And how do we talk about sex as being a really good thing and a gift that you wait for, rather than talking about sex is wrong, dirty, gross, don't do it until you get married? Then it's this beautiful, amazing, fun thing. And you've got these people who are like, what? I just spent, 18, 25, 30 years of my life, you yelling at me saying, no, don't do it, dirty, gross, bad. And all of a sudden in one night, it's supposed to be this amazing, beautiful gift. Like, yeah. So I think coming out of like, okay, we did it poorly before. Now, how do we do it better? That's one thing. The second thing is, I think that a lot of times it's just uncomfortable to speak on. It's for a lot of pastors, it's the second most uncomfortable topic to speak on after money. So I think there's a lot of that. And then there's a lot of, I guess you could call it shame. And I'm talking more, not so much from the pulpit now, I'm talking more from the congregation, is people are just uncomfortable talking about it. And even when there's problems and questions, it's not an easy thing to talk about, right? It's not an easy thing for Jessica in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, who has lived there her whole life, gone to the same church her whole life. The only people who talk about sex are the people she sees on the internet. Her pastor doesn't talk about it, her parents don't talk about it. And then she gets married and she's like, what the heck is going on? This is great. Well, now she knows everyone in her community and she's never been taught it properly, but now she's struggling. She can't orgasm. Her and her husband are having this difficulty. They don't know what they like, all these types of things. Who does she go to, right? She's got nobody. So she doesn't know who to talk to. And that's a lot of people's story, is they grew up in this town or this place where nobody talked about it. They are now in this age where the internet dominates everything. And that's where we're being educated, which we are doing with Kingdom Sexuality, hopefully trying to help those people say, hey, nobody talked to you about this. Let us be one of the people to talk to you about this in a healthy way. Yeah. But now you've got these people and they don't know where to go. And they don't know how to talk to their friends about it. And so I think it's just been done in a way where we don't know how to ask good questions about it and we don't know where to go for help. And it is kind of still this taboo topic. Nobody wants to talk about it, even in, friendships. Friends don't talk about sex. So it's like, who do you go to? Right. And then maybe, hopefully, you see our Instagram reel. It's like, oh, hey, these people look like they talk about sex from a biblical perspective. Maybe I'll listen to them. Oh, maybe I'll share this with a friend and then we can start talking about it. So our whole goal is to get you talking about it in a healthy way, or at least be a healthy place where you can come and be informed.
Yeah, and I think you guys are accomplishing that. I mean, you have a huge audience on Instagram. I know the podcast has done really well because I think you're right. These conversations aren't happening, even though maybe we want them to happen. And podcast, Instagram, these have just been places where people can at least kind of get the ball rolling. Where does this conversation start? Like if we're talking about a biblical, or like your branding is Kingdom Sexuality, what's the kingdom approach to sex to begin with? I mean, you mentioned something earlier, which is that sex is not something that you kind of just suppress until you're married, and then all of a sudden, like a light switch, you just turn it on. It's a gift that you wait for. Maybe unpack that a bit more, and just what are some of the general philosophies or doctrine that we should have in place when it comes to a biblical approach to sex?
Yeah, great question. One, I think you have to look at it as a gift, right? It is a gift from God. He has put body parts like the clitoris, for example, in women to strictly enjoy pleasure. So, one, it's a gift. Two, it is for both pleasure and procreation. It's not just for procreation, which I think is a message that a lot of us have kind of been taught or heard. Is like, yeah, you have sex to make babies. It's not supposed to be this thing that you do all the time because it's supposed to be, great. But it is, and we believe that it is. We believe God desires for us to have pleasure. I believe that if we consider an orgasm the greatest pleasure that a human can experience in life, I see that as such a beautiful pointer to God and just like a fraction of what eternity is going to be like with him. And then sex should be selfless, right? Sex is not about you. Sex is a way for you to serve your spouse. And the funny part of that is like, if both of you are having that mentality, sex is going to be great. I say that if when your marriage is selfless, your marriage wins, right? If both spouses are being selfless, the marriage is going to win. So I think sex is a gift. Sex is for both procreation and pleasure, and sex should be selfless. I think those are kind of like the three pillars that I would give you.
Tell me about the selfless part a little bit more, because I think that's really lost in our culture. I think especially when you start having conversations around sex, it's always, we don't have enough sex. She doesn't want to do X, Y, Z. I think, again, I'm speaking from the male perspective here, but I know, I think there's some porn programming in there where pornography has definitely conditioned us to really just prioritize our own needs, our own desires in this conversation. But unpack this from a biblical perspective. Why is sex selfless, and why is sex better when it's selfless in nature?
Yeah, I think it's better when it's selfless in nature because, one, from the man's perspective, if you're being selfless and serving your spouse and seeing that what you're doing to your spouse is bringing her pleasure, in return, that's going to bring you pleasure. Seeing something that you're doing and it bringing your spouse this immense amount of pleasure is a pleasurable thing, right? It's what's the word? There's this word, it's called compersion. And it's the idea of getting joy from seeing someone else have joy from your actions. And so I think that just that one word describes it so well. It's like, if you serve your spouse and it brings them joy, in return, it's going to bring you joy. It's the whole idea of generosity, right? Like, why do we feel good at Christmas time giving people gifts that they enjoy? Well, it feels good to see that they're experiencing joy by something that you did for them. It's the same thing in the bedroom. It feels good to see that what you're doing to your spouse is bringing them joy. And then you're both winning, right? If I'm serving my spouse doing something, she's experiencing joy. I'm seeing this, her have this amazing experience. I'm getting joy. Well, now we both have joy and we're both winning. And so if that goes both ways, of course, it's always going to feel good to receive as well, right? You can't solely be satisfied by giving all the time. You'll end up burning out and being exhausted. So yes, you do need to receive as well. And that's where it's selfless, right? In return, my wife's going to serve me in a certain way, and she's going to see that I'm receiving pleasure and she's going to get that pleasure in return. So I think compersion is just like the one word that just so beautifully wraps up how I feel about the selflessness of sex. Is it's going to benefit both of you. And how selfless has God been with us, right? How selfless was he when he sent Jesus? How selfless was Jesus to all of those around him and going to the cross for us? So I think it's just another reflection of the way that God and Jesus have served us. We are meant to do that to the others in our lives.
And would this be a good starting point for the people we were talking about before? That is a majority of people our age that grew up in purity culture and maybe have that programming that's very anti-sex, and they're trying to figure out, wait, now that I'm married, I'm actually supposed to enjoy sex. In our client base, we have a coaching practice called Deep Clean. We've helped a lot of guys quit pornography, but a lot of them, despite even being able to quit pornography, are still learning how to enjoy sex again, because their experience of sex was so intertwined with porn and something very fake and produced and unrealistic. And I found that this whole concept of selflessness is something we really have to drill home with our clients to be able to find at least kind of a shoehorn into enjoying sex again and being biblical about it, like it really combats that selfish nature that is so developed by pornography. Is that a good place for people to start if they grew up in purity culture and maybe had some of this poor messaging growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you grew up in purity culture and you don't understand a biblical framework of what sex is meant to be, you have to go back to the beginning and retrain yourself on what sex is, what it is meant to be, right? This whole idea of deconstruction is really popular these days. You need to deconstruct your beliefs about sex and then reconstruct them in a healthy way. And so for all of our purity culture listeners of our podcast, that's exactly what we tried to do. Is we have a series that we recently did just called Fundamentals of Sex, and it's 6 straight episodes. You start at the first one and you just build your way up, and hopefully by the end of it, we have helped you reconstruct a healthy biblical framework of what sex looks like. All the things I just said, right? It's a gift. Pleasure. It's okay to experience pleasure during sex. It's meant to be selfless. And we expand on that, right? And then we teach you, how to be confident in the bedroom, how to, quote unquote, level up. Like what else is there that's available to you in the bedroom? And so hopefully through all of that, kind of reconstruct how you have what a biblical and God-centered marriage and sex life would look like.
I want to ask you about leveling up and some of those things in a little bit.
Sure.
But maybe not as you're talking about it more. Now I'm kind of thinking, how did this all come to be? Like, did you always know that this is something you wanted to talk about? You're married, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what are the origins of you even just starting Kingdom Sexuality?
Sure. So I didn't start it. I'll just say that up front. Okay. One of the girls, so there were a team of 3 right now, me and two women. We're all friends through the ministry. We didn't know each other before any of this started. It all just was total God thing. So Alana started it. She was pregnant with her first. This is back in 2020, summer 2020. She had just had her first. And sex wasn't great for her. I hope I'm paraphrasing this well. So if you want to hear the real story, go listen to her story on our podcast because she'll tell it better than I will. But she realized there was more available to her. Sex was not great. And she thought there's no way that this is all it's meant to be. There has to be more. And so she went looking for resources. Where can I go to find a Christian resource on how to build a proper framework of what sex should look like? And she didn't find one. And she talked to her mentor about it, and she kind of felt this calling of, maybe it's you, maybe it's me that's supposed to be doing this thing. And her mentor said, I think this is a podcast. And after her mentor said that, a friend right away popped into her mind, a friend she hadn't talked to in a while. And within several days, this friend had reached out and said, hey, I'm really feeling a calling to do something in the Christian intimacy marriage space. And I thought about you. And she's like, are you kidding me? Like, I just had this conversation with my mentor. You were the first person that came to my mind. Now you're sending me this message. Okay, like this has to be a thing. We have to do this. Wow. And so they did it. And they started the podcast once a week, every Monday. And they started doing reels on Instagram. And both of them, they kind of come from purity culture background. So they focused on that. And it just took off like wildfire. They found a big reach on Instagram with people who related to their stories and wanted to experience the freedom that they now experienced. And then I'll quickly back up and tell a little bit of my story because that kind of flows into how I got into the team. So I like to start my story in Moses Lake, Washington. The year is 2008. I'm playing high-level baseball on a team. We're down there for a tournament. I'm still a rookie on this team, so anyone who's played like high-level sports, that there's 4 to a room. The most senior guy gets his own bed. The other 2 guys share a bed, and the rookie gets the floor. So I get the floor in this particular room. And my room happened to be like the hangout room. We had like the popular guys on the team. Everyone came and hang out in our room. So one night I'm just hanging out. All of a sudden, guys start flowing in. So yeah, all of a sudden, these 8 or 10 guys in the corner huddled up, and they're watching porn. And they say, hey, Enzi, come over here. And I say, no, I don't do that. And it was this moment of one, like I just told the most big hypocritical lie I could ever tell because that is exactly what I wanted to do, but I didn't want anyone to know it. I was so entrenched in a pornography addiction at this time that I would have loved to walk over there and join them. But I was the good Christian guy on the team, and good Christian guys don't do that. So that was kind of my story. I was first exposed in grade 6. I can remember 2 different instances. I don't remember which one came first. One was a friend in a magazine. One was a pop-up on the internet. And it kind of piqued my interest, and I made some clicks and looked through my buddy's magazine. And then by the time I was in high school, it was a full-blown addiction. The iPod came out, the iPod Touch came out, the internet got better and faster, and Pornhub became a bigger, better thing. So yeah, I was full on in it through all of high school. I remember in high school, I had a relationship with a girl, and it went on, I think we were almost together for 5 years. And I remember telling her at one point, like, hey, I'm really struggling with this thing. And her reaction was so passive and like laid back that it almost made me mad. I'm like, no, you're supposed to be mad at me for this thing. Like, you're supposed to be upset about this. And she just wasn't. And I was like, what the heck is going on here? So anyways, I graduated high school, 2010. I finally go to my parents and I tell them. And this is kind of the one thing throughout my story is I was pretty proactive in the fact that I didn't want this anymore. And I never lied about it, except for that one time at baseball. So I go to my parents, I tell them, we do a little bit of research, we find this thing called Covenant Eyes, we put it on all the devices, and it starts to help, but it's not perfect, it's not on all the devices, so help for a little bit. I ended up back in it. And then 2013 summer, I meet my wife, and we start dating, and she has a really, really healthy, extremely wise mentor, and we talk about getting married, and she says, before you guys get married, you guys need to do this thing called Freedom Session. And are you familiar with Freedom Session at all?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So for those listening who don't know, Freedom Session is basically a 12-step program to overcome anything that you are struggling with, from pornography to alcohol to anger to whatever. And you basically like inventory your whole life, and you, by the end of it, you're quote unquote free of this thing. And it was the best premarital counseling we could ever do. Like there, you know everything about your partner at this point. So we go through that. We get engaged, we get married, things are great. We're having sex. Sex is going to solve all my porn problems. And we get about 6 months into marriage, and shocker, sex didn't fix the porn problem. And so I go back to it. And again, I never hid it from my wife. I never lied about it. Every time she asked me, I was forthcoming. I wouldn't always be the one to offer it up, but if I was asked about it, I would never lie about it. And so everything kind of hit ahead in May of 2021. And I had a bad Covenant Eyes report that week. And my wife kind of said to me, like, that's enough. Like, you need to get some help. Please go get some help. Do whatever you need to do. This has to stop. And so I reached out to a counselor that we had seen in the past. And I just said, hey, this is what's going on. Do you know who I can go to for help? And so he referred me to Dr. Dave Curry, who is the guy who leads my recovery group out here in BC. And I still do my weekly group counseling every week, every Tuesday morning. And so, yeah, through that, I experienced freedom. I've relapsed a few times. It hasn't been perfect since then. But as of today, I think I'm pushing up on however many 100 days clear. So yeah, it's been good. That was May 2021 was a huge turnaround time for me. I kind of experienced freedom from all of that. And so through that, in summer of 2022, like May, June 2022, and my wife had found this Kingdom Sexuality Instagram account, and she had sent it to me, and I had followed along. And all of a sudden I see an Instagram story from them saying, hey, we've recognized that about a third of our followers are men, and we would like to serve them with our content. And so we're going to dedicate one day a week, Thursdays, to the men. And I had kind of felt this, I guess you could call it a calling. Like I knew that I could help more people with my story. And so when they said that, by this time I was a year and a bit clean. And I just said, hey, if you guys ever want a guy to actually join the team, I would be really interested. And so they got back to me and said, yeah, like we would love to meet with you. And so we had a couple meetings, interviews, and they're like, yeah, like you need to join the team.
Wow.
And so I joined the team. And so for a very, very short time, like a month, it was the three of us. And then one of the founding girls kind of dropped out. She had a bunch of family stuff going on and she never came back. So then for a time, it was just Alana and I. and we were running this thing and doing the podcast. And very quickly we realized it's a lot of work for two people, and it's not a good look for two unmarried people necessarily to be talking about sex on a podcast. We got a ton of negative feedback about that. And we did have boundaries. And other than the fact that, we're responsible for the, for how it looks, it was healthy. We had our spouse's approval. Our spouses were always around. We don't live in the same town, so we're never together alone. Like, we had a bunch of really healthy boundaries in place, and it would have worked out just fine, but it wasn't great optics. So we wanted the next person to join the team to be someone who knew about the ministry, cared about the podcast. So we put out a one-liner, just totally chill, just in the middle of an episode. Hey, by the way, we're looking for someone to join the team. If anyone out there is interested, please reach out. Here's our email. And then just went on with the rest of the episode, because we wanted to be someone who that would pique their interest and that they were a podcast listener. So they would only hear that if they listened to the podcast. And so two people reached out. We had one girl, I forget her name or where she was from. She was in the States somewhere. And then we had one girl reach out who happened to also be from BC. And her name was Tira, who we ended up going with. But it was really interesting and such a God thing, because I actually preferred the other girl. I thought her story was better. I liked her better. I thought she was a better fit for the team. And so Alana and I disagreed on this, and it's like, okay, how are we going to figure this out? So Alana prayed and said, God, because she wanted Tira, she said, God, if Tira is the one that is meant to be on this team, would you make it not work for the other girl? Would there be a great reason where she can't be the one? And within a couple days, the other girl reached out and said, hey, we've been struggling with infertility. We've been going through the adoption process. Our adoption process has been sped up by almost a year, and there's a child available for us. I'm not going to be able to be on the team.
Wow.
It was like, holy crap.
How's that for an answer to prayer?
Yeah, exactly. This could not be any more clear that it's supposed to be Tira. So Tira joined the team, and it was great because she had all the intellect that we didn't have. She was great at marketing. She was great with email. She did all the things that we didn't do well or didn't enjoy doing. She loved doing and was great at it. So it was a perfect fit, and it has been a perfect fit. So yeah, for the last 2 years, it's been the three of us kind of running this thing and growing it as best we can and trying to reach as many couples as we can and helping them transform their sex life.
It's amazing, man. Really, it's fascinating. It's cool how God brings people together at the right place, right time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to ask about the boundaries thing. Like you mentioned kind of the optics side of when it was just you and Alana. And obviously, like in the conversation about purity culture, I feel like the Billy Graham rule often comes up, and I know that's very controversial, very polarizing. Your wife is not involved in the podcast, but you're co-hosting with two other women, obviously talking about sex, and you guys do not, you don't hold back, right? Like this is not, it's not like it's not a light broach of the subject. Like you guys really talk in depth and go into detail. So what boundaries do you have in place, or what are even the checks and balances with your wife that allow this to work while still keeping the marriage safe and healthy?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's actually one of the reasons that we find our podcast to be unique is Alana always says we shine light on topics that are often left in the dark. So you will hear us say blowjob and orgasm and all of these things that you might not hear on other podcasts, and you probably won't hear your pastor say from the pulpit. And that's kind of the point, is these things are being talked about by society. And if people are learning about these things from society, I'd rather them learn from us, from a biblical perspective. So, boundaries. So there was a time where we were recording in person together. We lived close enough where I would fly up to Kelowna, which is like a less than an hour flight, and Alana would drive over, which is like an hour and a half drive, and we would record several episodes in a day, and then I would just fly home that night. And that was probably the only time where there was like the possibility of two of us being left alone, right? One of us goes to get lunch or whatever. So that happened a few times where, Tira would go get lunch for us, but we would always make sure that there was someone else in the house, or like someone was babysitting Tira's kids. Okay, her mom's there. Okay, so let's go upstairs and let's be around her mom. So there's no chance of any bad optics or anything happening. So first of all, we all have our spouse's full approval of what we are doing. And we've all had conversations with our spouses as to what is offside in terms of what we can and can't share. So almost never do we share personal details about our own sex lives. We are always talking about sex, not about our sex lives, which is really hard because people are captivated by a story and people want to hear the authenticity, right? Authenticity is one of the currencies of today. So a really delicate balance in being as authentic as possible while still protecting our own marriages. So we don't talk about our own sex lives in terms of like what we do, don't do, like, don't like, that kind of stuff. We will talk about experiences in very general terms. But for most of the time, we're just talking topically, right? If we're talking about oral sex, okay, this is what oral sex is. This is what we believe the Bible has to say about it. This is what we believe. This is how to do it. This is some things that your spouse might like. This is some things that your spouse might not like. This is how to handle ejaculation, all sorts of things, right? So we're going to talk about those things, but we're not going to talk about how it is necessarily in our marriage. And there are times, we recently did an episode on car sex. And so we said, okay, all of us have gone and done this in the last month because we wanted to experience it and be able to share from experience. So then we went and shared, okay, if you got this type of car, here's a position that might work. Or you got this type of car, hey, here's a tip, right? But again, it's very general and it's not like this super intimate personal detail.
Yeah.
So it has been a delicate balance. All of our spouses are involved in some way. My wife has been on several episodes. She'll sometimes help me on like Instagram story Q&As. Alana's husband is kind of like our finance guy. He is an accountant, so he handles all of our bookkeeping and that kind of stuff. And then Tira's husband, he just thinks so differently than the other five of us. He's like the best consultant you could ask for because he has so many unique perspectives on things. So they're all involved in some way or another, not directly, not day to day, and not like forward facing on the podcast or on Instagram.
There's something to be said about that. Sorry, just to interrupt you for a sec. I think there's something to be said about that. Even just that the spouses all have their involvement, and it sounds like you guys are all getting to know each other as you obviously do the show together. Because I think that there's a lesson here. Because obviously most people listening aren't maybe going to start their own podcast or whatever it might be. But I know my wife and I are both involved in worship teams. My wife co-leads worship. I usually just play keys. And even like leading worship together is it's very vulnerable. It's an intimate kind of experience. It's very open. And, we both have our stories of early as younger worship leaders running into jealousy issues with spouses of, worship leaders that we were co-leading with and that kind of thing. And there was nothing going on. There was nothing malicious. Even optically, there was really no reason to be upset. But it can kind of poke those buttons and people can piece things together that they have no business piecing together. Mm-hmm. So we both just learned, like, if we're ever in a co-leading situation with someone of the opposite sex, just to make sure that we're super intentional about connecting with their spouse off stage and building relationship there, because it just creates that sense of safety and security of not like they're fine, like I can vouch for them, you don't have anything to worry about, but the spouse can actually say like, oh no, I've talked to Sathya, he's a good guy, I know he's got my back, or whatever it might be. So I think there's something even just to be said about that dynamic that I imagine helps with just the security and the trust within the marriage, right?
Totally. Yeah. So Alana and my wife have actually become great friends. They talk every day now. So that's been like a huge benefit, is having this person that I talk about sex with. Like, okay, my wife is now friends with her. So there's like that trust that's built there. We all try to get together at least once a year. So we do a Christmas party where we all come to one person's city and they host us for a day and a night, and we all hang out. So we've all gotten to know each other over the past couple of years. We try to get together twice a year, but yeah, for sure once a year at Christmas. So yeah, we all know each other. We're all friends now. And we all know that the podcast is talking about sex. So it's not like any of this is a big surprise. Like, oh, you did an episode on oral sex? You did an episode on cars? Like, yeah, you know this is what the podcast is about. And we're all in constant conversation with our spouses. So they know what's going on. Nothing's a shock. Nothing's a surprise. And that's kind of what I love about our podcast is a lot of marriage podcasts you listen to, a lot of sex podcasts you listen to, you're getting like one person's perspective. With our podcast, you're getting the perspective of three very unique marriages. And chances are better that you're going to connect with one of those better than the other. And that's great. As long as you connect with one, that's great. But if you're listening to a podcast where, it's a couple or it's a therapist, you're just getting that one perspective and you might not connect with that. That's what I love about our podcast is we offer those unique perspectives that hopefully you connect with at least one of us.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So I know earlier you talked about how if your content was doing its job. It's facilitating conversations. So it's not just that people become necessarily glued to you guys, although there's plenty to learn from you guys, like you're saying. But then I guess the next step is that they start to engage in conversations elsewhere. What does this look like? Like, if this carried out properly, how does this play out for somebody?
So the chances are that you are finding us on Instagram from an Instagram reel and you're connecting with whatever the topic is, or you're saying, oh, someone like is talking about sex from a kingdom perspective. That's great. Let me follow along. And then you find our podcast and you start listening. And there is a good chance that something is going on in your sex life. There's an area where you would like help. Whether it's, wife can't orgasm, husband has, premature ejaculation, or you guys want to spice things up, things are kind of dull right now, whatever it is, chances are there's something that you would like help with, and there's a good chance that we've covered it. So what we want for our podcast and our platform to be a place that facilitates conversation where you can go to your spouse and feel safe and comfortable having that conversation to improve your sex life in whatever way it is that you're wishing for. So let's say a couple wants to introduce oral sex to their marriage for the first time, and husband finds our podcast, finds our series on oral sex, goes to his wife, says, hey, I've been thinking about, oral sex and introducing it to our marriage. I found this really great Christian podcast that has a series on oral sex. Would you be willing to listen to it with me? And that's kind of how it would go. And do they end up having oral sex? Do they not? I have no idea. It doesn't really matter. We want them to have healthy, Christ-centered conversations about what sex looks like in marriage. And we talk about it on almost every episode. You cannot have good sex without good communication. So if we can facilitate you as a couple having more healthier conversations about sex, mission accomplished.
Talk about the guy's role in that healthy communication piece. What should guys be doing to foster good communication that's going to lead to good sex?
Yeah. Guys suck at talking about their own emotions and their own vulnerabilities. So I would say that is the one thing that guys need to get better at is if you're not happy with something, guys are not good about expressing that in a healthy way. It either comes out as anger or it comes out as, it doesn't come out at all, just maximum passivity. We as guys need to be better at expressing ourselves to our spouses in a healthy way. And so if I can provide a perspective as a guy where you have a better strategy to go to your wife and to talk to your wife in a healthy way, I'm a huge fan of questions. So rather than making a statement to your spouse, ask a question of your spouse. It's a way less threatening way to receive information because it puts the receiver in the driver's seat by being the one that's able to give an answer. I'm a huge fan of that. Honestly, I forget your question. I forget where I was going with this, but
no, just like practicals for guys to lead the communication part well.
Oh, to lead communication. Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly what I said, right? And that's why I love having our podcast as an excuse. You don't know how to bring this up? Hey, I was listening to this really great Christian podcast and they did a topic about XYZ. Would you be willing to listen to it with me? Like, how non-threatening is that?
Right. As opposed to,
hey, I want you to give me a blowjob.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Or even, yeah. Right. Just going for it. Yeah. Okay, got it. So asking questions, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. What about, do you guys have any, frameworks or guidelines for debriefing sex or giving feedback about sex to improve it in the future?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big fans of post-sex debriefs. So a lot of times...
Every time? Like generally?
Every couple is going to be different. If you're doing something you've never done before, definitely do it then. As you kind of get more comfortable with each other, and you guys communicate better during sex, you get a pretty good idea how it went by the time it's done anyways. You don't necessarily need to debrief it, but yeah, if you're trying something new for the first time or, something was a little bit different, then definitely debrief that. And the debriefing is literally just like, hey, how was that for you? How did that feel? What did you feel inside? What was going through your head when that happened? And don't overwhelm the person with questions. So just pick one. Like if my wife and I just did something for the first time, hey, what was that like for you? Open-ended question, let her respond. Maybe she asks it back. Maybe it just generates conversation. But yeah, big fan of the debrief.
Yeah. Okay. And if a couple is trying something for the first time, like you mentioned, like a couple that maybe wants to try oral sex for the first time, do you have any guidelines there on how to go? Like, do you pray about it? Do you read the Bible? I don't know. Are there any checks and balances? Things that you should do before you actually try something new as a couple?
Yeah. So first off, there's got to be like mutual enthusiastic consent. And so you both have to be okay with it, whatever's going on.
Enthusiastic consent. I like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
word. Yeah.
Yeah. So you both, not that you both have to be excited about it, right? Because one of you might be nervous. You're doing something the first time. Nerves are a natural reaction to that. But not that someone is pressured into consent or manipulated into consent. It's freely given consent on both sides. So that's first and foremost. You guys both have to be consenting to whatever you're doing. Secondly, yes, go to the Bible. If you are not sure if this is something that you are biblically allowed to do, go to the Bible, read, pray, ask God to convict you if there's any convictions that need to be had. And then once you actually get to the night or the time where you're ready to do it, I like to move at the pace of the most conservative spouse. So let's say I am wanting to do something with my wife and she is the one that is agreeing to do it. We're going to move at her pace. And she's going to probably take the lead with whatever it is, because that's going to give her the most amount of comfort and the most amount of safety in whatever it is that we're doing. So those are kind of the things that I would say is
that's really good. Yeah,
the most conservative spouse needs to lead. Or if they're not comfortable leading, you need to be checking in regularly as the spouse who is taking the lead and is the one that was suggesting whatever the thing was.
Yes. Yep. No, there's a lot of wisdom in there. On the biblical side of things, how clear is the Bible on something like something like oral sex, or I don't know what different things people are trying necessarily. It's obviously different for everyone, but what do you look for in Scripture to get some clarity?
Yeah, it's about as clear as mud.
Yeah.
So this is
Solomon.
Exactly.
There's something there which is helpful.
Exactly.
But
so there is going to be an aspect of personal convictions, right? I am convicted to not do oral sex. That's what some people might say. I am convicted that oral sex is permissible. Those people can both be right in their conviction. It's not this hill we need to die on, right? It's not a salvific thing. So I like the 3 Ps. So no porn, no pets, no other people. That's like a really basic framework of what is permissible. And I don't think I don't think anyone's able to argue any of those. So that's
no pets. You really have to say no pets, hey?
You would be surprised. Yes, okay. You have to say no pets.
Okay, fair. Yep.
Or animals, I should say. So yeah, that's like the minimum framework. And then the other unique thing about our podcast is none of us are pastors, none of us are counselors. We're just people who are married and have sex and are willing to facilitate the conversations about it. So we often have pastors on talking about these things, and like we have a series called Ask a Pastor, and we'll go on Instagram and throw out a text box and say, hey, we're doing an episode coming up with pastors. What questions do you have? And then we'll go into the episode and we'll ask those questions. So we don't claim to have any biblical authority in these things that we say. Anything that we talk about is, we always say like, hey, if you have convictions against this, that's totally fine. You are more than welcome to have those. We're not going to tell you have to or have to not do this thing other than those 3 Ps. So yeah, it's pretty open-ended. It's pretty whatever your personal convictions are. And I say that like very warily because that can give people a lot of license either way. But again, that's where it comes back to being selfless. Hey, maybe there is this thing I am uncomfortable doing or I am nervous about doing, but you know what? I really want to serve my spouse and I'm going to do it. And maybe I end up liking it. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of people who say like, only do things that you're comfortable with or only have sex when you're in the mood. Well, if we only had sex when both spouses were in the mood, there'd be a whole lot less sex going on. A lot
of sexless marriages going around.
Exactly. Yeah. And so there's this thing called responsive desire where you don't actually have the desire for sex until it starts. And so a person like that, they would never have sex if you only did it when you wanted it. So again, it comes back to being selfless on both spouses' parts, right? The spouse who wants to, try the thing that their other spouse is suggesting, and on the part of the spouse that's suggesting it, hey, maybe selflessness for you is, hey, I see you're not comfortable with that right now. I'm totally fine not doing it. Let's put a pin in it for another time, right? I like to say when you ask about something for the first time, it's either yes, no, or not right now. And that's a pretty good framework to build off. If it's a no, okay, it's a no. Don't ask about it until I bring it up again. If it's a not right now, hey, can I bring that up again in 3 months? And if it's a yes, obviously you got your answer.
Okay, good. Yeah, good wisdom. What about if somebody, so okay, they kind of follow this framework of we've talked about it. Maybe the guy wants to do something and the woman's not so sure. So she says, you know what, let's pray about it. Let's go through scripture together. And he comes out of it and he's got a conviction like, okay, yes, I'm feeling even better about this now. She's feeling worse about it afterwards, and she ultimately says no.
Yeah.
How does a guy, just any wisdom, this is like more now the psychology and kind of the emotional side of just how do you process that no, especially if it is kind of a hard no. It's not a no or not right now, like you were saying a minute ago, but it's like a no. I'm pretty sure I don't want to do this. Any advice there on just how a guy can process that, especially if it was something he was really excited about or something that maybe meant something to him?
So we like to always say, what is your why? So to the guy, why was this something that was so important to you? And why is it so devastating that you got to know? Again, going to the psychology, go deep. You might have to, we always refer out to counselors, like a huge fans of counseling. So maybe go find a counselor. Hey, my wife and I are talking about this. She said no, and it really crushed me. And I don't know why it was so devastating to me. And maybe it's a good thing that you got to know. Maybe it was something that, you've seen in porn and you want to recreate with your spouse, or you want her to act like so-and-so porn star. Okay, that's probably a good thing you got to know, because that's not a healthy reason to go into marriage wanting to do something. And then for the wife as well, hey, why did that end up being a no? What was the reasoning behind that? What's going on in your mind when you feel like that? What emotions come up? All sorts of things. Again, it's probably going to be a counseling thing. If it is something that is really conflicting between spouses, then go get some professional help.
Couples that are in a sexless marriage. What's your top advice there?
Yeah, this is tough. Someone has to make the first move. And usually the first move is admitting that you're in a sexless marriage. And both spouses getting to the point of admitting it, because chances are one of them for sure recognizes it and one of them for sure is either not aware of it or is just apathetic toward it.
Yeah.
So both of you have to get on board saying, you know what, yes, we are in a sexless marriage right now and we both want to fix this, or at least getting to the point where, it's not okay that this is a sexless marriage right now. So admitting it is the first step. And then from there, somebody has to make the first move to get out of it. And it's always better if it's the passive spouse, but 99% of the times it's not the one who is the passive spouse. So again, there is a reason that it became a sexless marriage, and it probably has nothing to do with sex. It probably has to do with everything else going on in marriage. So there's no other great way. We have an episode on our podcast talking getting out of a slump. And the best conclusion is to just go and get some professional help, because the reason you're not having sex is not because of sex. It is because of other stuff going on in the marriage.
Yeah. Okay. Makes a lot of sense. I promised I would ask you earlier about if people want to spice it up. So I guess on kind of, if we swing the pendulum the other way, couples are having sex. Maybe it's losing a little bit of the excitement, losing a little bit of that zazz. Again, how do you take a biblical approach to spicing things up again?
Yeah. So again, it's got to be selfless. It's got to be mutually consenting. It's got to be all those things that we talked about. And then there is a lot of freedom in the bedroom. And we believe that God offers this freedom lovingly and as a beautiful gift for us to experience all that there is to experience in the bedroom. So whether couples want to introduce sex toys or, lingerie or dancing or music or new positions or flavored lubes or whatever is out there, right? There's a lot of stuff out there, role playing or whatever. There's so much out there, but again, mutually consenting and not the 3 Ps, all those things that we talked about. But there is a lot of stuff available out there, and it's a really fun and beautiful gift that God's given us.
And I have to imagine there's my wife and I have not reached that point where we needed to, although I imagine at some point it'll happen. It sounds very vulnerable, like even to propose like, hey, I want to try, I don't know, role playing or flavored lube or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. If somebody wants it, do they just need to kind of go for it? Is there any words of wisdom for somebody to muster up the courage to even have that conversation when that desire is realized?
Yeah, questions. So let's take the flavored lube example. Hey, babe, I was, listening to this podcast and they talked about flavored lube. Have you ever thought about introducing that into our marriage? boom, have a conversation. Like, questions are the best way to bring something up. Hey, babe, I just use our podcast all the time. I was listening to this podcast and they were talking about how, women wearing lingerie throughout the day can help get them in the mood for the nighttime. Have you ever thought about trying that? Have you ever thought about, hey, should we go look for some lingerie that you would feel sexy in and I would enjoy seeing you in? Or, hey, I was talking to so-and-so and he mentioned that they use a vibrator during sex. Have you ever thought about doing that in our sex life? Again, questions, so non-threatening, so easy to generate conversation.
Yeah, and I imagine even people are hearing that and are thinking, at least some are probably thinking, I could never ask my spouse that. She'd freak out. She'd be so offended. She'd be disgusted by it. How often is that actually true, though?
Less than you'd think, but it is still true. And that's where we would encourage the receiver of the question. Okay, why did you have such a visceral reaction to that question? Where did that come from? Because that came from somewhere, right? And was that reaction healthy? So sometimes the question that you asked is not wrong, and you might just get a wrong response. And so then the onus is on the receiver. Hey, why did you have that reaction? Where did that come from?
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Yeah. That's actually really helpful because I think sometimes if you ask the question, you get that response, you assume you must have done something wrong. You shouldn't have asked that. And if maybe this is one-sided, so someone's listening to your podcast a lot, they're well-informed, they're bringing up the questions, but maybe their spouse isn't, and their spouse has the reaction and doesn't have the wherewithal to say, oh, maybe I do need to explore where that came from. Do you just leave it alone for the time being and maybe wait till another opportunity to bring it up?
Yeah, leave it alone. Or depending on how well you know your spouse and how well you think they're going to react, it is okay to make that suggestion. Hey, why do you think you had such a strong negative reaction to that question? Where did that come from? And maybe this is where the walls go up and the conversation's over because they don't want to talk about it. Okay, great. Yeah, walk away, leave it alone. But there has to still be that onus on the receiver to address that in some way. And that's a really, really tough place to be, to tell your spouse, hey, the reaction that you had to that, I don't think was healthy. And I think you need to explore that, especially if they had that reaction. You're probably not the person they're going to want to hear that from. So that is a really delicate dance to do. And I don't have any great advice there other than encourage them to talk to a counselor if they're comfortable talking to a friend, because maybe it's not you that's going to be the person that they're going to want to navigate that with, at least in the short term.
Yep. Totally fair.
And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, yeah. I mean, I think that would be a healthy thing, actually.
Totally.
It's good if they can go elsewhere and have those conversations first.
Yeah.
At the beginning of this conversation, we were talking a little bit about just the difficulty it is to find the kind of conversations you guys are having on your podcast, which I think is why you guys have done so well, because you're having a conversation, like you said, that nobody's having. They're not talking about the stuff on Sunday mornings at church, and it's not happening a lot even at home. Although I think maybe that part is at least getting a little bit better. Mm-hmm. Do you think there's a world, or do you think it would be ideal that one day these conversations do happen more from the pulpit, or at least, I don't know, small groups or workshops in a local church, if not on a Sunday morning? Or do you think this kind of balance is okay? It's okay that people get a certain thing from the local church and maybe from podcasts and that kind of stuff elsewhere. I guess I'm just wondering, because I can tell you guys all have a local church affiliation or attachment or something to that effect. How do you envision some sort of convergence down the road? Do you think that would be ideal or healthy, or do you think the way things are okay?
I don't think the way things are is okay. I think there needs to be more. I don't know if it needs to go all the way, at least not on a Sunday morning from the pulpit. So I'll use my church as an example. My wife and I did not have I shouldn't say any, we had my porn problem, but the purity culture was not a thing. Any problems that we brought into the marriage were our own issues. It wasn't like the church didn't inform us properly. We had really good premarital counseling. We did the freedom session. Our church is very open talking about sex. They did a whole series on marriage and sex, while we were engaged, which was super helpful. And our church talks about it on a regular basis. Do I think that pastors need to be up there talking about oral sex and orgasms and sex toys? I don't know, and I'm hesitant to say yes, because depending on the age of your audience, you're going to have people in there who aren't necessarily ready for that topic, right? Kids who have maybe aged out of the kids program, but they're not old enough where their parents have had those conversations with them. So our church puts up a disclaimer before you walk into the auditorium saying, hey, today's sermon is going to talk about topics around sex. Feel free to not bring in your young ones. So, and I think that's great. But again, if you've got a 15-year-old in there, do we need to be talking about sex toys and orgasms from the pulpit? I don't know. I don't think so. So I think we need to talk about what is sex, what is God's design for sex, what does healthy sex look like, what is available to you. But I think if you want to go deeper, I think that's where like workshops and seminars and marriage conferences, I think that's where those conversations should be happening. And so that's where we would love to partner with churches. It's like, hey, let us host a Q&A night for you where, you can be on stage with us as the pastor answer these things. We'll be on stage and let's, tackle these things together.
Yeah. And have pastors been open to that idea?
We haven't really proposed it yet. Like we're just in the process of like, hey, what does it look like from our end? And then proposing it to churches. So yeah, if anyone's listening and wants us to come, we'd love to come. But we're just about to start that.
Very cool. Yeah, it's a great idea. I'm really curious to see how it goes because I think I feel like we're on the cusp. Like I think the local church is waking up to how necessary it is to have these conversations. And I think maybe this is the most open we've ever been as a society talking about sex,
Totally.
and these kinds of things. So I feel like there's an opportunity there. I know for us with getting to local churches to talk about pornography use, it's really difficult for a lot of the reasons that maybe it would be a challenge for you guys. But additionally, we know that a lot of pastors struggle. So I think it'd be difficult for them to take the stage and invite someone in. And there's there's a sense of like, they have to be morally upstanding. Like there's a complexity there that you guys wouldn't have, which I think is really interesting. And I hope if any pastors are listening, go reach out to these guys because that would be a gift to any congregant. And like you said, you guys got to see your church go through a series on sex when you were engaged. Like how incredible is that? Like what kind of value is that? And good timing to set you guys up for success. It's amazing. Kyle, this has been amazing, man. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. You're so chill just talking about such a, such a dense and layered subject, which I think, again, just shows you're clearly the person for the role that God's given you and the assignment you have in this season. For people that want to find out more about you guys and what you're up to, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. It's always funny to say I'm so chill. Like whenever we have community group or something and sex comes up, I am always like, I'm never going to be the first person to talk about it because I know my comfort level is like way on one end of the spectrum compared to everyone else. So I'm like, hey, you guys talk about it and I'll pick up where the comfort level is and I'll jump in as necessary.
Yeah. Read the room first. And then
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'd love for you guys to come and engage with us. We're Kingdom Sexuality on Instagram. Our podcast is Kingdom Sexuality Podcast. Our website is kingdomsexualityministry.com. And between those three places, you will find everything that we have to offer.
Beautiful. Yeah, man. We'll put the links in the show notes to all that stuff. Thank you for your time and thanks for the work you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.